Picture this. You're standing on a cobblestone street in London, 1875. The air tastes like coal smoke and horse manure. Gas lamps flicker weakly through the fog, casting shadows that seem to breathe. Somewhere, a church bell tolls the hour. Women pass by in layers of fabric so heavy you can hear the swish of their skirts on stone. Their faces are pale, almost ghostly, their waists impossibly small. They move like they're floating, like they're already halfway to another world. You might think they look elegant, romantic even, like characters from a novel or figures in a painting. But if you could step closer, if you could really see what's underneath those silk gloves and lace collars, you'd understand something else entirely. You'd see bruises from whalebone, skin stained with arsenic, eyes hollow from exhaustion, from childbirth, from hunger that polite society pretends doesn't exist. You'd see women who are dying slowly, quietly, beautifully, because that's what the world expects of them. Tonight, we're walking into that world together. Not as observers behind glass in a museum, but as someone living it, breathing it, surviving it, if you're lucky. This isn't a story about tea parties and garden strolls. This is about what it truly meant to be a woman in Victorian England, from the moment Queen Victoria took the throne in 1837 until her death in 1901. 64 years, 3 generations, millions of women whose names we'll never know, whose graves have long since been forgotten, but whose struggles echo louder than any monument. So settle in, adjust your pillow, let the weight of the day drift away from your shoulders, because for the next hour and a half, you're not who you are now. You're a Victorian woman. And fair warning, you probably won't survive the night. We're going to peel back the curtain on a world that's been romanticized and sanitized until it barely resembles the truth. We'll walk through drawing rooms where women couldn't speak without permission, through factories where girls as young as 8 worked until their fingers bled, through hospitals where doctors didn't wash their hands and childbirth was a coin toss with death. We'll see the corsets that crushed ribs, the makeup that poisoned skin, the laws that treated women as property, and the asylums that swallowed them whole for the crime of being inconvenient. But we'll also see the rebels, the survivors, the women who looked at impossible odds and said not today, the ones who fought for education when universities said their brains were too small, who organised strikes when factory owners said they should be grateful for 12-hour days, who demanded the right to vote, to own property, to exist as full human beings, and who paid brutal prices for that audacity. This is their story, and it starts the way most Victorian women's stories started. With a morning you didn't choose, in a body you don't fully control, in a world that's already decided what you're worth. So close. Your eyes, if you'd like, or keep them open, watching the shadows on your ceiling. Either way, let yourself drift backward through time, past everything you know, past electricity and antibiotics, and the right to say no. Drift all the way back to a gaslit world where survival itself is a radical act. The year is 1875. You've just woken up, and your day is about to begin. The cold wakes you first. It always does. Victorian bedrooms aren't heated, not really. Maybe there's a fireplace, but the coal ran out hours ago, and whoever was supposed to tend it probably hasn't gotten up yet. Your breath comes out in small clouds. Your fingers are numb under the quilt, which is heavy enough to pin you down but not warm enough to matter. You don't want to move. Moving means leaving the thin cocoon of body heat you've built through the night. Moving means acknowledging that the day has started, and with it, all the impossible expectations that come with being a woman in 1875. But you have to move, because the alternative is worse. You swing your legs out of bed, and your feet hit the floor, and it's like stepping onto ice. The floorboards are bare, cold, unforgiving. If you're working class, you might not have shoes to slip into. If you're middle class, you reach for house slippers that are barely thicker than paper. Either way, you're shivering within seconds. The chamber pot sits under the bed. There's no bathroom, no running water, just this ceramic vessel that you'll have to use while trying not to think about who will empty it later. Privacy is a luxury you can't afford, not really. If you're a servant, you're sharing a room with 3 other girls. If you're married, your husband might still be asleep beside you. If you're in a workhouse, you're surrounded by strangers who can hear every breath you take. You relieve yourself quickly. The sound echoes. You try not to gag at the smell. This is normal. This is just how life is. Next comes washing. There's a basin on the washstand, but the water in it froze overnight. You'll have to break the thin layer of ice on top before you can splash your face. The water is so cold it feels like it's burning. You gasp. Your skin goes red. You pat yourself dry with a cloth that's still damp from yesterday, because nothing in this house ever fully dries. If you're wealthy, a maid might bring you warm water. If you're not, this is as good as it gets. Now comes the truly torturous part, getting dressed. You can't do this alone. Not if you're wearing what society demands. And society demands everything. First, the chemise. A thin cotton shift that goes over your bare skin. It's supposed to protect your body from the rougher fabrics to come, but it's also freezing. You pull it on quickly, arms shaking, then the drawers. Split down the middle because Victorian women don't wear closed underwear. The reasoning supposedly is hygiene. The reality is that it makes using the chamber pot easier, but it also means that cold air rushes up between your legs with every step. You'll never feel fully covered. Next, the corset. Ah, yes, the corset. The thing everyone thinks they know about. The symbol of Victorian oppression, tight lacing, fainting spells, and women gasping for air like dying fish. The truth is more complicated. Not every woman tight-laced. Most didn't, actually. Most wore their corsets with a reasonable amount of lacing, using them for back support and to create the fashionable silhouette of the era. But reasonable doesn't mean comfortable. It means tolerating compression. It means feeling the whalebone press against your ribs with every breath. It means adjusting your posture, your movements, your very existence around this cage of fabric and bone. If you're working class, your corset might be cheap, poorly made, and even more uncomfortable. If you're wealthy, it might be custom fitted, but that doesn't make it kind. You'll wear this thing for 12, 14, 16 hours a day. You'll eat in it, work in it, sleep in it sometimes, if you're too exhausted to undress. And you can't put it on yourself. Not really. The laces are in the back. You need help. If you're a servant, another servant will lace you. If you're wealthy, your lady's maid will do it. If you're alone, you'll struggle, contorting yourself into impossible angles, pulling and tugging until your shoulders ache and you're sweating from the effort. The maid, let's call her Mary, pulls the laces tight. You hold onto the bedpost and try to breathe. She tugs again. You feel your ribs compress. Your organs shift. Your breaths get shallow. This is normal. This is beauty. This is what a woman is supposed to endure. After the corset comes the petticoats, layers and layers of them. Heavy cotton or linen, depending on what you can afford. Each one adds weight, bulk, modesty. By the time you're done, you're wearing pounds of fabric. Your legs feel buried under textile mountains. You're already tired, and you haven't even left the bedroom. Then the crinoline, if you're fashionable. A cage of hoops that make your skirts balloon out dramatically. It's supposed to be freeing, they say. No more heavy petticoats crushing your legs. But the crinoline has its own dangers. It catches on furniture. It tips over in the wind. It gets caught in carriage doors and factory machinery. Women have died because their crinolines caught fire near open flames. 40,000 women, they estimate, burned to death in the 1850s and 1860s because fashion demanded they wear cages of wicker and wire. Finally, the dress. The bodice buttons up the front or back. Again, you can't reach. Mary helps. The fabric is restrictive across the shoulders because raising your arms too high isn't ladylike. The sleeves are tight. The collar is high, sometimes so high it chafes your neck raw. You can barely move. You can barely breathe. You're corseted, layered, armoured in cloth, and this is before you've even left the room. If you're working class, you skip some of this. You can't afford crinolines and endless petticoats. You wear simpler dresses, rougher fabrics, but you still wear the corset. You still wear enough layers to be considered decent. You're just hot, exhausted, and restricted in a cheaper way. Your hair comes next. Victorian women don't cut their hair short. It's long, often down to the waist or longer. You've brushed it before bed, maybe braided it. Now, you have to pin it up. Fashion demands elaborate styles. Curls, braids, twists all piled high on your head and secured with dozens of pins that dig into your scalp. If you're wealthy, your maid does this. If you're not, you do it yourself, arms aching as you reach behind your head, fingers fumbling with pins and combs. You look in the mirror. Your waist is tiny. Your skirts are vast. Your hair is perfect. You look like a lady. You also look like you might faint at any moment. The room smells like coal smoke and lavender sachet and something sour you can't quite place. Your stomach is empty. You haven't eaten yet. Breakfast will come later, if at all. For now, you descend the stairs carefully, one hand on the railing, the other gathering your skirts so you don't trip. Every step is a negotiation with fabric, with boning, with the weight of expectations pressing down on you from all sides. The day has barely started, and already you're exhausted. Let's talk about what happens if you get married, and make no mistake, you probably will. Because in Victorian England, marriage isn't really optional for most women. It's survival. Unless you're exceptionally wealthy with family money, or you're one of the rare few who manage to secure respectable work as a governess or teacher, marriage is how you survive. It's how you eat, how you have a roof over your head, how you avoid the workhouse or worse. The problem is, marriage doesn't just change your name, it erases you. There's a legal doctrine called coverture. It's been around for centuries, but the Victorians cling to it with special fervour. Here's how it works. The moment you marry, you cease to exist as a legal person. Your husband absorbs you. Your identity, your property, your money, your very self, it all becomes his. You can't own property. Even if you inherited land from your father, even if you worked for years and saved every penny, the moment you say I do, it belongs to your husband. He can sell it, gamble it away, give it to his mistress. You have no say. You can't sign contracts. Want to open a bank account? You need your husband's permission. Want to start a business? His permission. Want to make any decision about your own life? You guessed it. You can't sue anyone, not even your husband. If he beats you, steals from you, abandons you, too bad. The law doesn't recognize you as separate from him. How can you sue yourself? And divorce. Forget it. Until 1857, divorce requires an Act of Parliament, which means it's expensive, public, and almost impossible to obtain. After 1857, the Matrimonial Causes Act makes divorce theoretically available, but the grounds are absurdly unequal. A man can divorce his wife for adultery. Simple, straightforward, one act of infidelity and he's free. But a woman? She has to prove adultery plus one of the following: incest, bigamy, cruelty or desertion for 2 years. Adultery alone isn't enough. Her husband can keep a mistress for decades and she's stuck. But the moment she's unfaithful even once, he can cast her out and keep everything, including the children. Because yes, he owns those too. Children belong to the father. Always. In the eyes of the law, mothers have no parental rights. If your marriage ends for any reason, your husband gets custody. You might never see your children again. Doesn't matter if you're the one who birthed them, nursed them, raised them. They're his property, not yours. So when women talk about being trapped in marriages, they mean it literally. Let's say your husband is violent. Let's say he drinks, comes home angry, hits you, threatens the children. What are your options? You can't leave. Where would you go? You have no money, no legal right to take anything with you. If you flee to your family, he can demand you return. If you refuse, you've abandoned him, which gives him grounds for divorce, and he'll keep everything. You can't report him to the police. Domestic violence isn't really a crime. Oh, there are laws against assault, technically, but enforcement is another matter. The police don't want to get involved in domestic disputes. They'll tell you to go home, be a better wife, stop provoking him. If he kills you, well, that's murder, and he might hang for it. But short of that, you're on your own. There's a saying among Victorian women, passed in whispers: better to marry a kind brute than a cruel gentleman. Because at least the brute might have moments of softness. The cruel gentleman will destroy you with precision, using the law as his weapon, and society will applaud his restraint. Some women get lucky. They marry decent men who treat them as partners rather than property, men who don't exercise every legal right they possess. These marriages can be happy, or at least bearable, but luck is a gamble, and marriage is a contract you can't escape. Courtship itself is a performance. You meet a man, usually through family connections or social events. You're never alone with him, always chaperoned. You can't speak freely, can't touch, can barely look at each other without someone monitoring every glance for impropriety. If he's interested, he'll court you. Visits, flowers, polite conversation in drawing rooms under your mother's watchful eye. You're being evaluated. Your dowry, your family connections, your ability to run a household and bear healthy children. You're not a person, you're an investment. If he proposes, you have two choices, yes or no. But no is complicated. If you've been courting for months, if everyone expects an an engagement, saying no brings shame. Your reputation suffers. Other men might avoid you. You're labelled difficult, particular, too proud. And if you say yes, you've just signed away everything. The wedding night is rarely discussed in polite company, but the reality is often brutal. Most Victorian women receive zero sex education. Their mothers might whisper vague warnings about wifely duty. Older sisters might hint at pain. But concrete information, knowledge about their own bodies, about what sex actually involves, that's considered too indelicate for unmarried girls. So you walk into your wedding night terrified and ignorant. Your husband might be gentle, or he might not. He might care about your comfort, or he might simply take what he's now legally entitled to. There's no concept of marital rape. Your body belongs to him now. You can't refuse. If you try, he can force you, and it's perfectly legal. After all, you're one flesh now. How can a man rape himself? Some women are fortunate. They marry men who are patient, who care about consent, even if the law doesn't require it. But many women spend their wedding nights in pain, in tears, wishing they were anywhere else. And then comes the realization that this isn't a single night. This is every night for the rest of your life. Pregnancy follows, almost inevitably. You might bear 8, 10, 12 children. Each pregnancy is a roll of the dice. Each birth might kill you, but you can't refuse. Contraception is available technically. Condoms exist, though they're expensive and often unreliable. Withdrawal is practiced. Dashing after sex, sponges soaked in vinegar, all methods with high failure rates, and using any of them requires your husband's cooperation. If he wants children, or if he simply doesn't care about the risk to your health, you have no recourse. Your body isn't yours to protect. There are women who love their husbands, who find genuine partnership within the constraints of coverture, who build lives that feel full despite the legal framework designed to erase them. But love doesn't change the law. Even the kindest husband holds absolute power over his wife. And absolute power, even when unused, shapes everything. You learn to be careful, to manage his moods, to make your requests sound like his ideas, to hide money in small amounts if you can, to cultivate relationships with his family members who might advocate for you if things go wrong. You learn to be small, agreeable, invisible, because the alternative is war and you have no weapons. This is marriage in Victorian England, not romance, not partnership, not unless you're extraordinarily lucky. It's legal ownership, it's erasure, it's a cage with a pretty name. And the worst part? Society calls you ungrateful if you complain. After all, you're married, you have security, a home, a husband to protect you. The fact that you need protection from the very man who's supposed to provide it, that's just the way things are. Some women fight back. They push for legal reform. The Married Women's Property Acts of 1870 and 1882 are hard-won victories, allowing married women to keep their own earnings and eventually own property in their own names. But progress is slow, glacial, and most women won't live to see the full dismantling of coverture. For now, you're married, and the person you used to be. She's gone, absorbed, covered, erased. Welcome to being a wife. There's a phrase Victorian society loves to throw around, the angel in the house. It comes from a poem by Coventry Patmore, published in 1854. It describes the ideal woman as pure, selfless, devoted entirely to her husband and home. She doesn't have desires of her own. She exists to serve, to soothe, to create a peaceful sanctuary for her husband to retreat to after his important work in the world. She's not a person. She's an idea, a fantasy, an impossible standard that crushes real women under its weight. Let's say you're middle class, not wealthy enough for armies of servants, but comfortable enough to have a maid or two. Your job, your entire existence, revolves around the home. You wake before dawn. While your husband sleeps, you're already planning the day's meals, checking inventories, making sure the house runs smoothly. The servants need direction. Meals need planning. Accounts need balancing. Yes, accounts. Even though you can't legally own money, you're expected to manage the household budget with precision. You track every penny spent on coal, candles, flour, meat, fabric, soap. You negotiate with tradespeople. You make sure nothing is wasted, because waste reflects poorly on you. Isabella Beeton's Book of Household Management sits on your shelf like a Bible. Published in 1861, it's 112 pages of instruction on how to be the perfect household manager. It tells you how to hire servants, how to dismiss them, how to organise your day down to the minute, how to cure bacon, how to treat scorpion stings in case that comes up, how to host dinner parties, how to make sure your husband never sees the chaos behind the curtain. You follow it religiously because failure means social death. Your day is a carefully choreographed performance. Morning calls where you visit other women and they visit you, discussing nothing of importance for exactly 15 minutes per visit. Longer is presumptuous. Shorter is rude. Afternoon tea, embroidery. Reading, but only approved literature. Nothing too stimulating. Nothing that might give you ideas above your station. And always, always you're monitoring the servants. If you have a cook, a housemaid, perhaps a nursemaid for the children, you're responsible for their conduct. You check their work. Make sure they're not stealing, drinking, bringing men into the house. You mediate their disputes. You write their references when they leave. You're a manager, essentially. But you can't call it that. That would be too masculine, too much like work. Instead, you're fulfilling your natural role, creating a haven of peace and order, being the angel your husband deserves. The reality? You're exhausted. Now let's say you're working class. Your day looks nothing like this peaceful domestic fantasy. You wake even earlier, maybe 4 a.m, because you're not managing servants, you are the servant, or you're a factory girl, or a laundress, or a seamstress hunched over piecework in your tenement room, or a hawker selling goods in the street. Victorian women work. They work brutally hard. The idea that women stayed home while men laboured is a middle-class fantasy. Working-class women have always worked, and the Industrial Revolution just made that work more dangerous and more visible. If you're a domestic servant, you're at the bottom of the household hierarchy. You wake before anyone else to light the fires, empty chamber pots, fetch water, scrub floors. You're invisible unless you make a mistake. Then you're very visible indeed. Your hands are raw from lye soap and cold water. Your back aches from hauling coal scuttles. Your knees are bruised from scrubbing. You earn maybe £10 to £15 a year, plus room and board. The room is an attic cell. The board is leftovers. You work 16 hours a day, sometimes more. You get half a day off every other Sunday if you're lucky. You're not allowed male visitors, not allowed to marry, not allowed much of anything except work. And if the master of the house takes an interest in you, if he corners you in the hallway, in the pantry, in your attic room, you have no recourse. Fighting back means dismissal without a reference. Pregnancy means disgrace in the workhouse. Silence means survival. So you stay silent. If you're in a factory, it's different, but no less brutal. Textile mills, match factories, pottery works, these places hire women because they can pay you less than men. Sometimes half as much for the same work. You stand for 12, 14 hours a day. The noise is deafening. Cotton dust fills your lungs. Machinery churns inches from your fingers. And if you're not careful, if you reach too far, if you're too tired and your attention slips, those machines will take your hand, your arm, your life. Safety regulations barely exist. Child labour is common. You're working alongside girls as young as 8. Some of them have already lost fingers. The match girls have it worst of all. They work with white phosphorus, which glows beautifully but also destroys jaws. Phossy jaw, they call it. Your teeth fall out, your jawbone rots, your face literally disintegrates. The pain is indescribable. The smell of your own decay follows you everywhere. Factory owners know this happens. They don't care. You're replaceable. There's always another desperate woman or girl willing to risk her life for a few shillings a week. You go home to a tenement, 1 or 2 rooms for an entire family. No running water, no toilet. Just a shared privy in the courtyard that overflows when it rains. No ventilation except cracks in the walls that let in winter cold and summer rot. You cook over a single fireplace or a small stove if you're fortunate. You wash clothes in communal areas. You try to keep the children clean, fed, alive. You fall into bed so exhausted you don't remember lying down. And tomorrow, you do it again. For middle-class women, the cage is gilded. For working-class women, it's rusty iron. But it's still a cage. The angel in the house doesn't work. She doesn't sweat or bleed or struggle. She glides through clean rooms, dispensing gentle wisdom and moral guidance. Real women? They scrub, they haul, they bleed through their shifts from standing too long. They develop varicose veins and fallen arches and backs that seize up without warning. They miscarry from heavy lifting and keep working because they can't afford not to. They burn themselves on stoves and cut themselves on broken glass and just wrap it up and keep going. This is domesticity in Victorian England, not the soft focus watercolour version. The truth. The cult of domesticity tells women their sphere is the home, but it never mentions that the home is a workplace more demanding than any factory. It never mentions the physical toll, the mental exhaustion of constant management, the impossibility of the standards you're supposed to meet. Middle-class women aren't supposed to look tired, aren't supposed to complain, aren't supposed to admit that managing a household is actual labour. Working-class women are worked until they break, then discarded. And through it all, society insists this is natural. This is what women are designed for. This is your highest calling. You're supposed to be grateful. The house must be spotless. The meals must be perfect. The children must be quiet and well-behaved. Your husband must be comfortable. Your servants must be respectful. Your visitors must be impressed. You must never let anyone see you sweat. This is your life. This is your purpose. This is the cult of domesticity, and it will grind you down to nothing while insisting you've never been more fulfilled. But you keep going, because what else can you do? The house won't run itself. The children won't raise themselves. The standards won't lower themselves just because you're tired. So you push through, day after day, year after year, until one day you realize you can't remember who you were before this. Before the endless tasks and impossible expectations, you've become the angel, bloodless, exhausted, almost entirely erased. You're pregnant. Congratulations. You've just entered the most dangerous period of your life. In Victorian England, childbirth is the leading cause of death for women of reproductive age. The statistics are grim. In the 1850s, the maternal mortality rate is about 47 per 10,000 births. That means around 3,100 women die every year in England and Wales alone. 1 in 200 births ends in the mother's death. If you have 8 children, which is common, your odds of surviving all those births shrink dramatically. So when you realise you're pregnant, when you miss your monthly bleeding and your breasts start to ache and the morning sickness hits, fear arrives with it. Not just discomfort, not just inconvenience, genuine rational terror. Because you know women who didn't make it through. Your neighbour, your sister, your husband's first wife. The graves are everywhere. Young women in their 20s and 30s died in childbed, their babies sometimes buried with them. The first few months you might hide it. Pregnancy isn't discussed in polite company until it's unavoidable. You lace your corset a bit looser. You avoid social events. You pray the sickness passes quickly, because vomiting into a chamber pot while wearing 16 layers of clothing is its own special hell. Eventually you can't hide it anymore. Your belly swells. You're confined. That's the technical term. Confined to your home, to your bedroom, away from public eyes. Pregnant women aren't supposed to be seen. It's considered indelicate, vulgar even. If you're wealthy, you might spend months in near isolation. If you're working class, you work until you literally can't anymore. Then you stop, and you hope you don't get dismissed for it. You have no prenatal care, no vitamins, no ultrasounds, no one checking to make sure the baby is positioned correctly, or that your blood pressure isn't dangerously high. You just wait and hope. If you can afford it, you hire a monthly nurse. She'll assist with the birth and stay for a few weeks afterward to help you recover. If you can't afford it, you rely on a local midwife, whose training consists mostly of having delivered babies before. Some midwives are skilled. They have years of experience and good instincts. Others are disasters waiting to happen. The medical establishment is starting to push doctors into the delivery room, especially for difficult births. This should be progress. It's not, because doctors in the 1850s, 1860s, even into the 1870s, don't know about germs. They don't wash their hands. They go from performing autopsies on corpses directly to delivering babies, their hands still crusted with blood and God knows what else. They carry death with them, and they don't even know it. Puerperal fever, childbed fever, is the biggest killer. It's a bacterial infection that tears through maternity wards and homes alike. One doctor examines a woman with an infection, then goes to the next patient without washing, and boom, the infection spreads. The symptoms start within days of giving birth. Fever, chills, your belly swells and hurts. The pain is excruciating. You burn up from the inside. You become delirious. Within a week, you're often dead. Doctors have no idea what causes it. Some blame bad air. Others blame the woman's constitution. A few blame moral failings, suggesting that women who die in childbirth must have sinned. It's not until the 1880s that germ theory becomes widely accepted, that doctors start washing their hands and sterilizing instruments, that maternal mortality finally begins to drop. But for now, for you, in 1875, giving birth is Russian roulette. Labour starts without warning. Maybe your water breaks. Maybe contractions begin slowly and build. Either way, there's no turning back now. You'll move to the birthing room. If you're wealthy, this might be a specially prepared space with clean linens. If you're not, it's wherever you can lie down. The pain is unlike anything you've ever experienced. Waves of it, building and cresting and smashing through you. Your body is trying to tear itself apart to let this baby out. For pain relief, you have nothing. Well, that's not quite true. You have prayer. And if you're very fortunate, you might have chloroform. Chloroform was first used in childbirth in 1847 by Dr. James Simpson. By the 1850s, it's becoming more common, especially after Queen Victoria herself used it for the birth of Prince Leopold in 1853. She called it soothing, quieting, delightful beyond measure. But many doctors oppose it. They cite the Bible, Genesis specifically, the part where God tells Eve that she will bring forth children in sorrow. Pain in childbirth is divine punishment for original sin, they argue. Using chloroform is defying God's will. Even when it's available, chloroform is dangerous. Too little and it does nothing. Too much and it kills you. Dosing is guesswork. Administration is crude, just a cloth soaked in chloroform held over your nose and mouth. So, you might get pain relief, or you might just get more risk. Most women labour without any anaesthetic at all. They bite down on leather straps or wooden sticks. They scream until their throats bleed. They beg for death. Labour can last hours, sometimes days. Your body exhausts itself pushing, contracting, trying desperately to expel this baby. If you're lucky, the baby comes out head first, healthy, crying. If you're not lucky, the baby is breech, sideways, too big. The cord is wrapped around its neck. The placenta is blocking the way. Any of these complications can kill you both. Forceps exist. Metal tongs that doctors insert into your body to grab the baby's head and pull. They're supposed to help with difficult births. Sometimes they do. Other times they crush the baby's skull or tear your insides apart. Some doctors perform caesarean sections, but this is incredibly rare and almost always fatal for the mother. Cutting through layers of muscle and uterus without anaesthesia, without antibiotics, with no understanding of infection control. It's butchery, not surgery. If the baby is stuck and clearly dead, doctors might perform a craniotomy. They crush the baby's skull to make it small enough to remove, It's horrific, traumatic, but it's sometimes the only way to save the mother. You don't get to choose, you don't get to consent. Things happen to your body based on what the doctor or midwife thinks is necessary. Finally, after hours or days of agony, the baby is out. You're bleeding, shaking, delirious with pain and exhaustion, but you're not done. The placenta still needs to come out. Sometimes it detaches naturally, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes doctors manually remove it, reaching inside you with unwashed hands, increasing your risk of infection exponentially. Hemorrhaging is common. Your uterus is supposed to contract and close off the blood vessels, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you just bleed, and bleed, and bleed. There's no blood transfusion, no surgical intervention, just pressure, compression, prayer. Women bleed to death in their own beds, surrounded by family, while everyone watches helplessly. If you survive, the recovery is brutal. Your body has been torn apart. Stitches, if you got them, are done with whatever thread is available. Infection is constant. Your breasts swell painfully as milk comes in. Your belly is loose and strange. Everything hurts. You're supposed to stay in bed for weeks. A month, ideally. But if you're working class, you can't afford that. You're up within days, going back to work, hoping you don't collapse. And the baby? If it survived birth, it still has to survive infancy. Child mortality is astronomical. About 1 in 5 children dies before age 5. Disease, malnutrition, accidents, they all take their toll. So you bond cautiously. You love, but you protect your heart. Because there's a good chance this baby won't make it to adulthood. You'll probably do this again, and again, and again. Queen Victoria had 9 children. That's not unusual for wealthy women. Working class women often have just as many, sometimes more. Each pregnancy is another roll of the dice. Each birth is another chance to die. Some women do die. You know their stories. The young bride who hemorrhaged out during her first delivery. The mother of 6 who developed puerperal fever and was dead within a week. The woman down the street who died along with her baby when the cord strangled them both. Their deaths are mourned, quietly. Prayers are said. Their husbands remarry quickly because children need a mother, and households need managing. Life goes on. But the fear never quite leaves. Every month when your bleeding arrives, there's a tiny bit of relief. You survived another cycle. But there's also the knowledge that someday, inevitably, you'll be pregnant again. And when that day comes, you'll smile and accept congratulations and prepare tiny clothes. And privately, in the dark of your room, you'll wonder if this is the one that kills you. Your body isn't yours. It never really was. But Victorian society makes sure you understand that with brutal clarity. Let's start with the corset. We've mentioned it, but we need to really talk about what it does to you. The myth is that Victorian women routinely tight-laced their corsets down to 17 or 18-inch waists, removing ribs to achieve impossible proportions. The truth is, most women didn't tight-lace to extremes. Museum corsets from the era average around 22 inches, which is still 10 inches smaller than the average waist today. But that doesn't mean corsets were harmless. Wearing a corset for 12 to 16 hours a day, every day, for years, does change your body. X-rays from Victorian women show ribs that curve inward at the bottom, reshaping the rib cage. Organs get compressed against the spine. Your lungs can't fully expand. Digestion becomes difficult because your stomach is being squeezed. You get used to breathing shallowly. Deep breaths are impossible. Singing is hard. Running is out of the question, though you weren't supposed to run anyway because that's unladylike. Some women fainted, not as often as the stories suggest. But it happened, usually from overheating, poor ventilation, or suddenly standing up too fast while corseted. Your blood can't circulate properly, your body compensates, but barely, and the muscle atrophy. Because the corset holds you upright, your core muscles don't have to work as hard. Over time, they weaken. Women who wore corsets daily would feel genuinely unsupported without them. Their backs ached, their posture slumped. The corset became a necessity, not because of vanity, but because their bodies had adapted to it. The irony is vicious. The corset was supposed to improve posture. Instead, it made women dependent on external support, literally weakening them. But the real war on women's bodies wasn't the corset, it was beauty. Victorian beauty standards demanded pale skin. Not just fair, but translucent, ghostly. You should look like you're wasting away. Like consumption, tuberculosis had kissed your cheeks and left you ethereally fragile. There's even a name for this aesthetic, consumption chic. People romanticized tuberculosis because it made women thin, gave them flushed cheeks, made their skin pale and their eyes bright. Beauty through disease. To achieve this look without actually dying, women turned to cosmetics, and Victorian cosmetics were poison. Arsenic was the star of the show. You could buy arsenic wafers at the local pharmacy. Dr. Campbell's safe. Arsenic complexion wafers promised a deliciously clear complexion. They were advertised as safe. They were not. Women ate them regularly, sometimes multiple times a day. The arsenic gave skin a pale, translucent quality. It also caused headaches, nausea, hair loss, and eventually death. But it was addictive. Once you started, stopping made you look suddenly old and tired. Withdrawal symptoms were brutal, so women kept taking it, even when they knew it was killing them. There were arsenic baths too. In Bohemia, women would soak in hot springs laced with arsenic, believing it would beautify their entire body. The springs were toxic. The women didn't care. Lead-based makeup was just as popular. Face paint made with white lead gave you that coveted pale complexion. You'd coat your face, neck, chest in it, a smooth porcelain mask. It also caused baldness, paralysis, muscle atrophy, brain swelling. Lead poisoning is cumulative. Every application added to the dose. Eventually your face would crack and peel from the damage, so you'd apply more paint to cover it up. A vicious cycle. For rosy cheeks and lips, women used vermilion. A red pigment made from mercury, another poison, more damage. Eye makeup contained antimony. Hair dye contained lead. Even the wallpaper in your house might contain arsenic, slowly poisoning you as you slept. Victorian women were literally dying for beauty. Then there were the eye drops. Belladonna, deadly nightshade. A few drops directly into your eyes would dilate your pupils, making them look large and luminous. Beautiful. It also caused blurred vision, light sensitivity, and sometimes permanent blindness. Women used it anyway. And the hair. Victorian women took pride in their hair. Long, thick, lustrous. But caring for it was another form of torture. You couldn't wash it often. Water was scarce, and getting all that hair fully wet and dry was a day's work. So you might wash it once a month, maybe once every 2 weeks if you were fastidious. In between, you brushed it. 100 strokes a night, they said. More if you wanted it to shine. You used oils and tonics, many containing ammonia, or other harsh chemicals that damaged your scalp. You curled it with hot irons that literally burned off chunks if you weren't careful. Baldness from overstyling was common enough that there was a whole industry of false hairpieces and wigs. At night, you wore a nightcap, partly for warmth, partly to keep your hair clean, partly to preserve whatever style you'd managed to create. Some nightcaps were simple cotton, others were elaborate silk confections meant to protect expensive hairdos. Let's talk about menstruation. Something Victorian society definitely doesn't talk about. You start bleeding around age 12 or 13. No one explains what's happening. If you're lucky, an older female relative whispers something vague about becoming a woman. If you're not lucky, you think you're dying. For managing the blood, you have rags, literally. Strips of cloth that you fold and pin to your undergarments. They're uncomfortable, inefficient, and need to be washed and reused. You can't talk about it. Menstruation is shameful, disgusting, proof of Eve's curse. You hide the rags when you wash them. You time your social engagements around your cycle. You live in constant fear of leaking and being publicly humiliated. Some women use sea sponges, inserted internally. Others just bleed through their clothes and deal with it. Pain relief doesn't exist. Cramps that double you over? Lie down and bear it. Headaches? Backaches? Just part of being a woman. And if your periods are irregular or painful enough to interfere with life, you might be diagnosed with hysteria. Ah, yes. Hysteria. The catch-all diagnosis for any woman who was inconvenient. The word comes from the Greek for uterus. Doctors literally believed that women's wombs wandered around their bodies causing chaos. Symptoms of hysteria included anxiety, irritability, insomnia, fainting, nervousness, excessive crying, excessive laughing, being too sexual, not being sexual enough. Basically, any emotion or behaviour that annoyed men could be labelled hysteria. The cure? Well, that varied. Some doctors prescribed bed rest, months of lying in a dark room, forbidden from reading or thinking too much, because that would overstimulate your delicate female brain. Others prescribed more frequent sex, under the belief that women needed regular sexual release for health. This was dressed up in medical language, but it boiled down to doctors telling husbands to sleep with their wives more often. Then there was pelvic massage. Doctors would manually stimulate women to hysterical paroxysm, orgasm in modern terms, as a medical treatment. This led to the invention of vibrators, initially medical devices to save doctors from hand cramps. The most extreme treatment? Hysterectomy, surgical removal of the uterus. Performed without anaesthetic in many cases, with high mortality rates, this was reserved for the most difficult cases. Or institutionalization. If a woman was too hysterical, too difficult, too anything, she could be committed to an asylum, indefinitely. Your body is a battlefield. Society is waging war on it from every direction, corseting it into submission, poisoning it for beauty, pathologizing its natural functions, treating its pain as delusion, using it, controlling it, punishing it, and through it all, you're supposed to smile, to be graceful, to never complain. After all, suffering is what makes you a woman. You're not supposed to be smart, at least not obviously so. Victorian society has very specific ideas about female education. Accomplished, yes. Educated, absolutely not. If you're upper class, you're taught accomplishments. Piano, singing, watercolours, embroidery, perhaps a bit of French or Italian. Enough to be charming at a dinner party, not enough to actually think for yourself. The goal is to make you marriageable, not knowledgeable. You learn to make polite conversation without ever saying anything substantial, to laugh at men's jokes even when they're not funny, to defer, to listen, to never ever disagree in a way that makes a man feel uncomfortable. Reading is permitted, but controlled. Novels are acceptable. Poetry, sure. Religious texts, of course. But philosophy, science, political treatises, those might give you dangerous ideas. There's a genuine belief that women's brains are smaller and therefore less capable. Doctors publish papers about it. Scientists measure skulls and declare women intellectually inferior by nature. Too much education, they warn, will damage your reproductive system, make you hysterical, even cause your uterus to shrink. Yes, they genuinely believe this. So if you show signs of being too clever, too curious, too interested in learning, you're discouraged, punished even. Your books might be taken away, your studies limited to safe, feminine topics. If you're working class, formal education is even scarcer. Some children attend ragged schools or church schools for a few years. Others never learn to read at all. Girls who do get schooling usually leave by age 12 to work. The education they receive is basic. Reading, writing, enough arithmetic to make change. Anything more is seen as wasteful. Why educate a future servant or factory worker? But some women want more, need more. They feel their minds starving behind the walls of propriety. These women have to fight for every scrap of knowledge. Take the governess's benevolent institution, founded in 1841. It revealed a crisis. Educated women with no money had almost no respectable employment options except governessing, and governesses were in a terrible position. Too educated to be servants, too poor to be ladies, they occupied a strange liminal space where they belonged nowhere. They were often lonely, overworked, underpaid, and vulnerable to sexual advances from employers. And their education was usually barely adequate for teaching children. This sparked conversations about women's education. Maybe, some progressives suggested, women should be properly educated so they can properly educate the next generation. Radical stuff. In 1848, Queen's College London opened, offering academic courses for women. In 1849, Bedford College followed. These weren't universities yet, just colleges. But they were a start. Women began organising lecture series, reading groups, private tutorials with sympathetic professors. They had to sneak knowledge like it was contraband. Getting into university was even harder. Cambridge and Oxford admitted women to lectures starting in the 1870s, but wouldn't grant them actual degrees until decades later. Women could do all the work, pass all the exams, and still not officially graduate. At Cambridge, women couldn't receive degrees until 1948. Oxford, 1920. Just being allowed to attend was a victory. The women who fought for this access faced incredible hostility. They were mocked, harassed, called unnatural. Professors declared they were wasting everyone's time. Male students protested, threw things, made their lives miserable, but they persisted. Women like Elizabeth Garrett Anderson had to fight just to become a doctor. She applied to medical schools and was rejected by all of them. Women couldn't be doctors. It wasn't done. So she found a loophole. The Society of Apothecaries didn't explicitly forbid women. She apprenticed, studied privately, and passed the exam in 1865. The society immediately changed their rules to exclude women after her, but she was licensed, and she opened clinics for women who were too embarrassed or afraid to see male doctors. There were women who became mathematicians despite being barred from universities, writers who published under male pseudonyms, scientists who conducted research in their homes because laboratories wouldn't allow them entry. They did extraordinary work, and most of them died unknown because their gender disqualified their accomplishments. Meanwhile, if you're an average woman, your intellectual life is conversation in drawing rooms and whatever books you can sneak. You develop strategies, you read late at night, hide books under embroidery, discuss ideas in letters with female friends, creating informal networks of learning. You hunger for ideas the way your body hungers for food, but you're told this hunger is unnatural, unfeminine, a sign something is wrong with you. The bluestockings, women in the 18th century who formed intellectual societies, were mocked relentlessly. The term became an insult. A bluestocking was a woman who cared more about books than beauty, who thought too much, who forgot her place. By the Victorian era, being called a bluestocking was social death. So you hide your intelligence. You play dumb. You let men explain things you already understand. You laugh at your own jokes and then credit the man next to you when he repeats it. You watch men with half your brain power succeed because they had access to schools, tutors, universities. They had mentors and opportunities, and the simple assumption that they deserved to use their minds, while you had embroidery. Some families were different. Some fathers educated their daughters alongside their sons. Some mothers taught their girls in secret. Some governesses were brilliant teachers who opened worlds. But these were exceptions, rare gifts in a system designed to keep women ignorant. The tragedy is how much potential was wasted. How many female Einsteins died in childbirth before they could think their great thoughts? How many female Shakespeares spent their lives doing needlework instead of writing plays? How many cures, inventions, discoveries never happened because half the population was barred from the laboratory? We'll never know what was lost, but you feel the loss every day, in the boredom that eats at your mind, in the conversations that never go deep enough, in the books you wish you could read, the ideas you wish you could explore, the person you might have been if anyone had believed your brain mattered as much as your womb. Education is power. That's why you're denied it. Ignorance keeps you dependent, controllable, safe for the men who benefit from your submission. So you stay ignorant, or you fight. And if you fight, you do it quietly, carefully, knowing that the price of being caught is being labelled mad, difficult, unnatural. But you fight anyway, because your mind is all you have that's truly yours, and you refuse to let it starve. The myth says Victorian women stayed home. The reality is, millions of women work brutally hard jobs for poverty wages. In 1900, almost a third of British women aged 15 to 20 are in domestic service. That's hundreds of thousands of young women scrubbing floors, emptying chamber pots, cooking meals, and raising other people's children. Let's say you're a housemaid, maybe 14 years old. You left your family's farm or your city tenement to work in a middle-class household. You wake at 5 in the morning, earlier in winter because fires need lighting before the family wakes. You dress in the freezing attic room you share with 2 other girls, pull on your uniform, and head downstairs. First task, Empty and clean all the chamber pots. The families, the other servants. The smell makes you gag, but you're not allowed to show it. Then you lay the fires throughout the house. Carry heavy coal scuttles up multiple flights of stairs. Your arms shake, your back aches. You're not even fully awake yet. Kitchen next. Help cook, prepare breakfast. Set the table. Serve the food with your face blank and hands steady even though you're exhausted. The family eats. You eat later, whatever's left over. Usually cold. After breakfast, clean the dining room, wash dishes, scrub pots. Then it's upstairs to make beds, dust furniture, sweep floors, polish brass, beat rugs. Every surface must be spotless. Every object in its place. One speck of dust and you'll hear about it. Lunch. Serve, clean, repeat. Afternoons might bring laundry. Without washing machines, you scrub clothes by hand in tubs of hot water and lye soap that eats your skin raw. Wring them out until your hands cramp. Hang them to dry. Iron them with flat irons heated on the stove, careful not to scorch expensive fabric. Or perhaps you're sent to market. Shopping for the cook, hauling heavy baskets through crowded streets. Trying not to get cheated by vendors because if you pay too much, it comes out of your wages. Dinner. Serve, clean. Finally, around 9 or 10 at night, you're done. You climb to your attic room, collapse into bed. Sleep a few hours, do it all again tomorrow. Your wages, £10 to £15 per year, plus room and board, which sounds better than it is. The room is cramped and cold, the board is leftovers and scraps. You get half a day off every other Sunday if you're fortunate. You're not allowed followers, meaning no male visitors, no courtship, no romance. You're expected to remain single and chaste. And if the master of the house decides he wants you, if he corners you in the pantry, pushes you down on your bed, tells you to keep quiet or you'll be dismissed without a character reference, you have no recourse, no protection, no voice. Pregnancy from assault means instant dismissal, no reference, no job. You'll end up in the workhouse or on the streets, so you submit. You endure. You survive however you can. Not all households are hellish. Some families treat servants decently. Fair. Wages, reasonable hours, respect. But those are the lucky ones. And luck is chance, not right. Now let's say you work in a factory instead. Textile mills employ thousands of women and children. The work is dangerous, deafening and relentless. You stand at your machine for 12 to 14 hours. The noise is so loud you can't hear your own thoughts. Cotton dust fills the air, settling in your lungs. By age 30, you're coughing blood. The machines have no safety guards. If you reach too far, if you're tired, and your attention slips for 1 second, the machinery will grab your dress, your hair, your hand. It will pull you in and tear you apart. Women lose fingers, hands, arms. Some die crushed in the gears while supervisors scream at everyone else to keep working. Your wages, maybe half what a man earns for the same work, sometimes less. The logic is simple. Women aren't breadwinners. They don't need full wages. Never mind that many women are supporting families. Never mind that they work just as hard. You're paid less because you're worth less. That's just how it is. The match girls have it worst of all. They work in factories making matches, dipping sticks in white phosphorus. It glows beautifully. It also destroys your jaw. Phossy jaw starts with a toothache. Then your gums swell. Your teeth fall out. Your jawbone begins to rot, literally disintegrate. The pain is indescribable. Your face caves in. The smell of your own decay follows you everywhere. Eventually, your whole lower face might have to be removed just to stop the spread. Many women die from the infection or from the shock of surgery. The factory owners know this happens. They don't care. Phosphorus is cheap and effective. Workers are replaceable. In 1888, the match girls go on strike. Young women, teenagers mostly, walk out demanding better pay and safer conditions. They're mocked in the press, told they're ungrateful, but they hold firm. And they win. Partial victory anyway. Better wages, some safety improvements. It's a crack in the wall. But for every match girl who strikes, there are hundreds more who just endure, who work until the Phossy jaw takes them, who die young and poor and forgotten. Seamstresses work from home doing piecework, paid per garment. You sew for 12, 16 hours a day. Your eyes strain in dim light. Your fingers bleed from needle pricks. A shirt might earn you a few pence. A fancy dress, shillings. But you have to provide your own thread, needles, candles. The costs eat into your earnings. You work until you're nearly blind. Many seamstresses develop severe vision problems by their 20s. And if work slows, if factories close or demand drops, you have nothing, no savings, no safety net, just hunger. Some women turn to prostitution, not because they want to, but because it's the only way to eat. Victorian prostitution is a spectrum. At the top are courtesans, kept women, mistresses of wealthy men. They live in nice apartments, wear fine clothes, but they're still dependent, still property in all but name. At the bottom are streetwalkers, women so desperate they sell their bodies in alleyways for pennies. They freeze in winter, starve, die from disease, violence, neglect. The Contagious Diseases Acts of the 1860s make it worse. Police can arrest any woman suspected of prostitution and force her to undergo invasive medical examinations. If she's found to have venereal disease, she's locked up. The acts don't punish male clients, only women. Because of course, Josephine Butler fights against these acts. She organises protests, writes pamphlets, gives speeches. She's called a whore for defending whores. Polite society shuns her. She doesn't stop. In 1886, the acts are repealed. Small victories matter. Middle-class women have different constraints. Respectable work for them is limited to governess, teacher, companion to an elderly woman. Being a governess sounds genteel. It's not. You live with a family but aren't part of it. Too educated to eat with the servants. Too lowly to eat with the family. You're in this strange liminal space belonging nowhere. You raise and educate their children. You're responsible for their moral development, their manners, their learning. But you have no authority. The parents undermine you. The children disrespect you. You earn maybe £25 to £40 per year. More than a housemaid, but not enough to save for the future. And when you age out, when you're too old or the family no longer needs you, you're cast off. No pension, no security. Just poverty and obscurity. Florence Nightingale transforms nursing into a respectable profession. Before her, nurses are mostly untrained working-class women, often drunk or worse. Nightingale establishes training schools, creates standards, turns nursing into skilled work. By the 1880s, nursing becomes an option for middle-class women. It's hard work, poorly paid, but it's purposeful. Respected, progress, however small. Typewriters and telephones create new opportunities. Women become clerks, telephonists, shop assistants. It's still poorly paid, still subject to harassment, but it's different work, indoor, cleaner. The walls are cracking, slowly. But for most women, work means exploitation. It means long hours and poverty wages. It means exhaustion and injury and the constant knowledge that you're expendable. You work because you have no choice, and you keep working until your body gives out or death takes you, because there is no retirement, no social security, no safety net. Just work until you can't, then die. The workhouse is the nightmare that haunts every poor woman's sleep. You know it's there, looming on the edge of your life. One missed paycheck, one eviction, one death in the family. That's all it would take to send you through those iron gates. The workhouse is supposed to be charity, a place for the destitute to receive food and shelter. But it's designed to be so miserable that only the truly desperate will choose it, and it succeeds. The 1834 Poor Law Amendment Act changed everything. Before, parishes might give outdoor relief, small amounts of money or food to help the poor stay in their homes. After 1834, relief mostly happens inside the workhouse. You want help? You give up everything else. Entering a workhouse means surrendering your freedom, your family, your identity. Families are separated immediately. Husbands sent to the men's ward, wives to the women's. Children torn away and sent to separate areas by age and gender. You might never see them again. Even if you're in the same building, contact is forbidden. You catch glimpses across the yard. That's all. The uniforms are deliberately degrading. Rough, ill-fitting, ugly. Everyone looks the same. Stripped of individuality, dignity, humanity. Your head might be shaved if you're suspected of having lice, which you probably do because the workhouse is filthy. The work is brutal and pointless. Women pick oakum, which means pulling apart old ropes fibre by fibre until your fingers bleed. It's tedious, painful, mind-numbing. Or you wash laundry for hours in scalding water. Or you break stones. Or you scrub floors already clean. The point isn't productivity, it's punishment. Food is calculated to the minimum needed to keep you alive. Gruel, bread, sometimes thin soup, tiny portions, always hungry, never satisfied. Sundays you get meat. A small piece, gristly and tough, but protein at least. Sickness is common. Typhoid, cholera, tuberculosis. They sweep through workhouses regularly. Too many people cram together. Poor sanitation. No medical care worth mentioning. If you get sick, you're moved to the infirmary. A death sentence more often than not. And if you're pregnant when you enter, the workhouse becomes a special kind of hell. You give birth there. No privacy, no comfort, just other women's screams echoing off stone walls. If the baby survives, it might be taken from you, adopted out, or kept in the child's ward where you rarely see it. If the baby doesn't survive, which is common, it's buried in the pauper's graveyard. Unmarked, forgotten. Some women spend years in the workhouse. They age out of the labour market, have no family to support them, die slowly inside these walls. Others bounce in and out. A few months in the workhouse, then back to work, then unemployed again, then back to the workhouse. It's a cycle of desperation. The elderly face particular cruelty. Old women who work their entire lives, who raised families, who contributed to society, end up dying alone in workhouse beds. No dignity, no respect, just an unmarked grave when it's over. The fear of the workhouse shapes everything. Women tolerate abusive husbands because leaving means the workhouse. They work despite illness because stopping means the workhouse. They suffer in silence because complaining might mean the workhouse. It's social control through terror. And it works perfectly. It can't all be misery. If it were, no, one would survive. So women find joy in tiny things, create beauty in impossible places, build networks of support that make the unbearable almost bearable. Friendships are lifelines. The women you work alongside, the neighbours you pass on the street, the sisters and cousins and confidants who understand without words what you're enduring. You write letters, long, detailed letters that substitute for conversation. You share your thoughts, your fears, your small rebellions. These letters are treasures. You save them, reread them when you're lonely. Some relationships deepen into something more. Romantic friendships between women are common, accepted even. You can live together, travel together, share your lives. Society doesn't always recognise these relationships as romantic or sexual, which means they're allowed to exist in ways they otherwise wouldn't be. Some are genuinely platonic. Others are love stories society refuses to name. Either way, women find each other. Create families of choice when biological families fail them. Reading is escape and sustenance. Even if your education is limited, if you can read at all, you devour books. Novels transport you. For a few hours, you're not a governess or a seamstress. You're Elizabeth Bennet, Jane Eyre. Someone whose story matters. Poetry offers different comfort. You memorize verses. Recite them in your head during dull moments. Let rhythm and rhyme soothe your thoughts. Music provides another kind of freedom. If you can play piano, those hours at the keyboard are yours. Your fingers on the keys, making something beautiful. Even if your playing is mediocre, even if you only know simple pieces, the act of creating sound, of shaping something with your own hands, matters. Singing costs nothing. You sing while working. Lullabies to children, hymns in church, folk songs with other women while doing laundry. Your voice is yours. No one can take that. Needlework isn't always drudgery. Sometimes it's art. You embroider intricate patterns, create beauty stitch by tiny stitch. The work is meditative, calming. You're making something that will outlast you. A tablecloth, a sampler, a christening gown. Future generations might use it, admire it, never knowing the woman who made it, but benefiting from her skill. Gardens offer peace. If you have access to even a small plot, you grow flowers, herbs, vegetables. Getting your hands in dirt, Watching things grow, harvesting what you've tended, it connects you to something larger than your daily struggles. Nature doesn't care about social class or gender. A seed grows for anyone who plants it properly. Children, despite the danger and exhaustion of raising them, bring genuine joy. Their laughter, their small discoveries, the way they trust you absolutely. You teach them songs and stories. Watch them learn to walk, to talk, to become themselves. For all the fear and difficulty, there are moments of pure delight. Tea is a small ritual with outsized importance. A moment to sit, to breathe, to taste something warm and comforting. Women gather for tea, share gossip and support. It's social lubrication and genuine communion. Food, when you have enough of it, is pleasure. A fresh baked loaf, strawberries in season, a Sunday roast. These tastes matter enormously when daily meals are repetitive and bland. Humour survives everything. Women laugh, wickedly sometimes, about their husbands, their employers, the absurdity of fashion and social rules. Laughter is rebellion and release. You find beauty in unexpected places. Morning light through a window. The pattern rain makes on glass. A cat curling in your lap. These moments don't erase the suffering, but they puncture it, create spaces to breathe. And that's enough. It has to be. Because this is your life, the only one you get. So you take the joy where you find it. Hold it close. Let it sustain you through everything else. The women we've walked with tonight, they're gone now. Every single one of them. Dust and bones and faded photographs. But their struggles carved the path we walk today. The right to own property, to vote, to work for equal pay, to control our own bodies, to be educated, to leave marriages, to exist as full legal persons. None of that was given freely. It was all fought for, bled for, died for, by women whose names we'll never know. The factory girl who joined a strike and got blacklisted. The mother who survived 8 births only to die in the 9th. The governess who taught herself science in secret. The seamstress who went blind doing piecework. The servant who endured assault in silence because speaking meant destruction. They fought in different ways, some through organised activism, others through simple refusal to break, by surviving another day when everything said they shouldn't. Their battles aren't ancient history. Queen Victoria died in 1901. That's only 124 years ago. Your great-great-grandmother might have lived through this. Definitely your great-great-great. This isn't the distant past. It's recent, raw, real. And in some places it's still happening. Women still dying in childbirth from preventable causes. Still denied education. Still treated as property. The work isn't finished. But we've come so far. Because they started the journey. Every time you vote, you're standing on the shoulders of suffragettes who were force-fed in prison. Every time you open a bank account in your own name, you're benefiting from women who fought coverture. Every time you refuse something you don't want, you're exercising freedoms they never had. Remember them, not as victims, not as angels or martyrs, as human beings who lived complex, difficult, sometimes joyful lives under circumstances designed to crush them. They were funny, brave, scared, angry, hopeful, just like you. They deserved better than they got. But with what they had, they built the foundation for everything you take for granted now. So as you drift off tonight, hold them gently in, your thoughts, the corset-laced, arsenic-poisoned childbed survivors, the working women with bleeding hands and iron spines, the rebels who said no when the world demanded yes. They lived, they endured, they fought, and because they did, you can close your eyes tonight in a world they would barely recognize. A world where being a woman doesn't automatically mean being property. Not perfect, not equal, not finished, but different, better, changed. Rest easy. Their work continues. But tonight, you can sleep. And that's where we'll leave our journey through Victorian women's lives. Not with easy answers or happy endings, but with the complicated truth of what they endured and how they survived. If this video helped you relax, if it gave you something to think about as you drift off, go ahead and like it. Let me know it was useful. Subscribe if you want more history to sleep. I make these regularly. Long form, researched, designed to be boring in the best possible way. And drop a comment with your city and the current time. I love seeing who's up with me in the middle of the night, or winding down after a long day, or just looking for something different to listen to. It helps me know this work is reaching people. Suggestions are always welcome too. What period of history interests you? What stories do you want told in this slow, sleepy style? I'll keep making them as long as you keep listening. For now, though, your job is simple. Relax. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Feel the weight of your body settling into the mattress. The Victorian era is over. Those women are at peace. Their struggles are history now. And you're here. Safe, warm, free in ways they couldn't imagine. Take a deep breath. Hold it. Let it out slowly. The world can wait until morning. For now, just drift. Let the past cradle you gently into sleep. Good night.